You're someone with a vision for your practice, for your side hustle, and for your personal journey. But when it comes to establishing your path on how to get to where you want to be with your practice, things get a little messy. You're also someone who'd prefer to go in person instead of to groups and listening to everyone else's story. To me, it sounds like you could benefit from one-on-one consulting with our experienced practice of the practice consultants. From $5.95 a month and up, you can work with a consultant that will give you more direction and practical tried and tested tips matched to you and your goals. For more information, visit practiceofthepractice.com/apply. Again, that's practiceofthepractice.com/apply. This is the Practice podcast with Joe Sanak, session number 1257. I'm Joe Sanak, your host, and welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast, where we help you build a thriving private practice that you absolutely love. And we often go way outside of the world of private practice, where we talk with influencers. We've been talking about talking with people that are ultra marathon runners to learn from them, to bring it back into this world, because we want you to thrive. We want you to do well. We want you to have good operations and all of that. But we also want you to love your practice. We want you to be doing work that you're like, this is what I want to do. And sometimes early on, it's hard to give yourself permission to say what you don't want to do, to say these kind of clients I don't want to work with, because we think, well, that's somehow making a judgment about those kind of clients. And it's just saying that's more draining for me personally. That's just an area that I don't see really niching into, which is why I'm so excited today to talk with Gary Katz, who is a psychotherapist and the founder of the Center for Intimacy Recovery in New York, which focuses primarily on intimacy and relationship issues. He's found that without a sense of intimacy with oneself, people can't fully experience intimacy with someone else. The Center for Intimacy Recovery helps clients find ways to have the intimacy and connection in life they're seeking, and to uncover all the ways that they've learned to play it safe and protect their hearts, which at times can get in the way of intimacy. Prior to opening the practice, Gary worked in education for over 20 years and as a rabbi. Gary, welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast.
Thanks for having me, Joe. It's great to see you again.
Yeah, and we just hung out at the group practice conference, and hopefully we'll see each other in person again next year.
Yeah.
And we were just talking before we got rolling about how at that conference, well, actually, I said something from the stage that really resonated with you. I'll let you say why it resonated with you instead of just summarize what you said and take all your glory.
Yeah, sure, no problem. I also just want to say that the sunglasses freebie gift that you gave out, I thought, all right, I'll use them. I'll try them. They actually are better than the expensive pair of sunglasses that I have. That makes it hard for me to read when I wear them. I have better vision than I do with this expensive pair. So I don't know where you got them from, but they were really great. So thank you.
We have done that was the very first swag we ever did at the ACA conference 2016. I wasn't a sponsor. It was too expensive. I literally just walked around the ACA conference and handed people sunglasses in Hawaii. And it was like, people were like, where are the sunglasses? And then they were just like, sunglass guy. And like the podcast just took off after that. It was total guerrilla marketing. I didn't have the budget for getting in the swag bag. And since then we've been like what's the cool swag that we can do instead of this?
It is, and the fact that they work better than what the amount you pay for an expensive pair of sunglasses. Like I'm grateful. So
I had an expensive pair of sunglasses back in college, and I sat on them within like 2 weeks, and it was like I have never bought sunglasses over like $20 now. Like I'm gonna sit on these. I'm gonna lose them. It's like I get the cheap reading glasses from Costco because I just misplaced them. So. Yeah. Figure you can have some cheap sunglasses.
Thank you very much. So yeah, I remember that you said twice, at least that I remember, as you were talking about the structure of the day, and you just said, you know what, like if you're outside in the hallway and you found someone that you're really connecting with and chatting with, whether it's personal or networking, we prize connection here above everything. And so if you're in the middle of a conversation and a new session is starting, take your time, like value what you're experiencing. And it just so resonated with me. I've quoted it multiple times since then. I've been at a couple conferences since the one in the group boss practice conference. And that's been kind of my guiding light. Like, do I want to connect with someone at the moment? Do I want to go learn? And if I am connecting with someone that feels really authentic and wonderful, then I'm going to stay in doing that. Like, I'd rather sit by the pool and chat with somebody in a real way than go find some new clinical modality or business idea.
Yeah. It's so funny you say sit by the pool with somebody. I still remember Adam Lewis Walker and I were both at a podcasting conference and we were speakers. We were like on stage a bunch and we'd been brought in to do this. It was almost like The Voice where you're like, I want you on my podcast. And people were like pitching, to get on our podcast. And I remember at lunch feeling this need to like go network with people and kind of work the room. And he was outside calling his kids and I went outside to call my kids. And we both got off the phone and started talking, and he has this like strong British accent, and so I'm picturing he's from like London or something. He's literally from an hour and a half away from where I live. He lives in like northern Michigan, up by the Mackinac Bridge. Now, anytime he flies out of Traverse City or his parents do fly in from London, like he stays over at my house. And he's been like this podcaster that I've got to know over the years. And it's like that decision to make that connection has actually helped my career. It's helped his career. And so I think that
Yeah.
so often we just miss these things when we're at conferences or we're moving on to our next thing. How does that connect with the work that you do with the Intimacy Center?
Yeah, that's a great question and a good segue. That's the exact work, like the like all of us or many of us, what I do professionally often was born out of what I struggled with personally or sought personally,
Mm,
especially in our field. Maybe not in data analysis or accounting, but in our field, I think that's true more. And so in my lifelong, still, I guess, journey of like seeking connection and intimacy with myself, just to want to feel okay with
mm,
myself, and connected to myself, understand myself, and then in turn with others, and both of which were sometimes very messy and still can be some really messy, and sometimes with a little dignity. But that's kind of what helped me when I started my private practice. It's a second career for me, like many of the listeners of this podcast. For me, education and working as a rabbi was my first career, and I still love teaching, which is one of the ways I've found to do it in this career too, with supervision. But yeah, so I just Center for Intimacy was born out of that idea of like wanting to help people be able to know themselves as well as possible, especially those parts of ourselves that we don't want to see. Like, we all have the parts that we like to see, the narrative that makes us feel good about ourselves. But those other parts, in Jungian work, it would be like the shadow parts or the subconscious that we try to, or in IFS, like exile from ourselves because it's too painful to acknowledge. Those are the parts that end up coming back and biting us in the butt or getting us into trouble because they're not honored. And so to me, intimacy is about seeing the totality of ourselves in all those parts. And then if I'm able to look at it in the straight on, it's more likely I'll share it with you. But if I can't even look at it, there's no way in hell I'm going to share it with you. So that's the focus of the practice and helping people to get, and I think that's all of therapy, probably. Really, that's any
yes.
therapy. But ours is like really focused on that. And then looking at all those ways through this lens of that we avoid that because it's scary. Because
Yeah.
even though it's what we all want, I think being seen, being connected to ourselves and to others is ultimately like that's where it's at. It's also scary, especially if we had painful experiences of that as a kid. So we develop strategies to like kind of do it but not do it. Like in middle school, it was like telling a girl you had a crush on her, but not saying it was you, but telling her the initials of the person who happened to be your own initials. At least that was my game for dating in middle school, in like sixth
It
grade.
sounds like a strong game for middle school.
Strong game. I got Kathy over to go out with me for a whole week. We went couple skating at the Friday night at the roller rink until I
Oh my
tripped
gosh.
during the couple skate and knocked us both over, which I still.
I remember sixth grade, there was a girl, Katie Lemieux, who, not the podcaster Katie Lemieux,
I don't
just
know.
to clarify, because she's in our counseling space, different Katie Lemieux. And I remember the whole school year, I had a crush on her. She was a year older, and then final like bus, I find out that she's like moving schools, and I'm like, I have to get her number. And we went and we actually talked on the phone, and we walked around the Civic Center, which is this mile loop, while her brother was playing baseball, and that was our one date, and then we just like never talked again. But it's like it took me a
Uh,
whole school year to even talk to her.
yeah, like, and so like that's the beauty. I think those are like they're beautiful stories. They're like we're
Yeah.
figuring it out. These little brains that aren't developed yet. These hearts that are courageous but terrified, and like as adults, we've got the same thing going on. We just learn how to do it a little more sophisticated or to hide it better and all that, you know?
Yeah. So Gary,
So,
like when you
yeah,
think about you said intimacy with yourself, it's in the bio, you just said it. Like I'm thinking about so I was raised Catholic and then for a bit I was evangelical and then I deconstructed that and I'd say probably now Taoism is what I'm closest to. Being a rabbi, being kind of in the religious world and then also seeing other ways that people are taught healthy or unhealthy intimacy. We don't have to go through and tear down
yeah,
other places, but what do you think when people have either religious trauma or religious upbringing? What does that look like when it gets in the way of intimacy with yourself first?
yeah. Well, I think phew, that's a great question, and probably 5 podcast episodes or a whole
Seriously, it
season.
could be its whole own podcast.
Yeah, I think that it can get in the way of intimacy where I hide behind. We can hide behind anything. So I can hide behind work. I could hide behind substances. I could hide behind perfectionism. I could hide behind um, religion and not be authentic, right? I can
Mm,
use religion as a way to not really serve God or the community or help others, which I think are beautiful things, but I can use it as a way because of my own issues to like get caught up in the rigidity of it potentially
yeah.
and not really connect with others. And I know people, and you see the same thing. Like let's say people who get sober in 12-step recovery, and like instead of being more relational, they get caught up in the rigidity of their healing. Or
Hmm.
people who jump into therapy and get so caught up in the favorite word of the day, or a couple of years ago, boundaries. Like so
Hmm.
caught up in that, but they're still not creating more connection and safety. They're caught up in the verbiage of it. So I think it's possible to use religion, and again, I want to be really clear. Like, I'm not criticizing religion. I'm not saying religion is X, Y, or Z. I'm talking about how some people. I think that was your question. But for the listeners, I want to be explicit that some people use anything for their own for an
Yeah.
unhealthy reason.
Now, we talked about kind of labeling this show around some areas that you see therapists just not dive into, and if people are listening at this point, they know the title of the show. So, sex and money. So, let's talk about sex. Let's talk about money. What do
Yeah,
most therapists? Let's talk about the negative side. Like, what do most therapists miss in regards to opportunities to talk about sex, opportunities to talk about money? Like,
yeah.
how do you conceptualize those things in regards to what should therapists be doing?
Well, I think what's interesting is that sex and money are things that every human has to deal with, whether they have money or they're having sex. They've had both probably at some point by the time they're in adulthood, I hope. So we have our own relationship with it, and they're loaded in many things. And I always forget the quote. I think it's Oscar Wilde who said that like everything's about sex except for sex. Sex is about power.
Mm,
And we can debate that quote, but it's real. There's a truth to it. There's so many things that are attached to sex and money that are not about the actual thing. My worth, am I desirable like sex, right? Just am I lovable? Am I attractive? Is my body look okay? My relationship to my body, where do I stand in society? Sex is a currency. Like it's a power thing. There's so many things that come into it, and the same with money, how people use money. And we also we're impacted by our family and the cultures and sometimes religion about our relationships to sex and money. And even as therapists, I think that therapists, especially my training as a clinical social work started in the tenements, helping underprivileged, poor people. So there's a culture in the social work field of like it's not like business and earning a good living is taboo. It's almost like antithetical to helping the downtrodden and helping the impoverished. So that's starting to change, but I think therapists have to learn that it's okay to make a good living. And so, what's your relationship to your fee? What's your the struggle, like, well, they can't afford it, but and I want to help them. Of course you want to help them. That's why you're in this field. Otherwise you would have got into finance or something else. So you have a beautiful heart. That's what we're all here for. But so I think we have to really look at our own relationship both to money and to sex, because it's going to come into the clinical room. And so I said this to you before we got on, like my practice, the Center for Intimacy, we get a lot of business because so many therapists don't want to talk about sex. We get
mm,
couples that have been in couples therapy for years with people, and they come in and like, we never talked about sex. He talks about everything else. We get people coming in with unhealthy sexual behaviors like compulsivity or other things, or hurting others, or just still never talking about sex. They're talking about the other things. But so I think if you if you see humans as clients, sex is involved, and so is money.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's so much shame and stuff caught up in these two topics that the therapist themselves has to have a little more clarity than like other things, because it's going to come in the room. It's going to impact your own relationship to it.
I want to thank Headway for sponsoring this episode. If you run a group practice, you know that accepting insurance can be overwhelming. Between credentialing, billing, and payroll, the admin side can easily take over your week. Headway was built to help you handle this, and they're the only platform designed specifically for in-network group practices. Whether you're growing your team or running an established practice, Headway makes the business side easier with faster credentialing, higher per session rates, and bi-weekly payments your team can count on. They work with therapy, psychiatric, and hybrid group practices. There are no subscription fees, just the support you need to run your practice with ease. Run your best group practice with Headway, trusted by thousands of group practice leaders to simplify insurance admin and reach more people through in-network care. Curious how Headway can work for you? Head to join.headway.co/Joe. That's join.headway.co/Joe to learn more. What are conversations around sex that you think every couple should have either together or with their therapist in the room?
That's a great question. Oof. Also a whole podcast series.
No pressure, just like an
Yeah, I
entire
think they should
masterclass in
talk.
like
I
3
think
minutes.
people should explore and talk about what they like. Many people don't.
Mm.
In fact, one of the questions I'll ask a couple or an individual, if I see them individually, is how do you and your partners, if you're in a relationship, or how do you initiate sex? I mean, the answers I get like, well, I know if my partner is wearing a certain T-shirt, she's in the mood, or she backs up against me and like in a certain way, I can tell that she's in the mood. Or, I had a sweet couple, but they used to call it sexual congress, and I was like picturing like Ted Cruz or, Mitch McConnell, somebody on the, not that way, but like a congressman standing on the floor of Congress, like sexual congress. What are you
I
talking
do
about?
declare today's the day.
Yeah, exactly. I recognize the speaker from the other side of the bed. But yeah, so like there's all these awkward or not awkward ways. And just like I might ask a client or a couple, like if I want to learn like about attachment with them, like what was bedtime for you like as a child? Or what was dinner
Mm.
time like for you as a young child? Which tells me what family dynamics felt like for them. I'm gonna ask a
Mm.
person like, how do you let your partner know you're interested in sex? Because that
Yeah.
tells so much about their comfort level. Can they just say, hey, honey, do you want to have sex? Like, and if they can't, and all these words like fool around, get it on. Like when I hear couples describe having sex, it's, there's a, there's so much shame brought into it. So whatever we
Mhm.
can do to take the shame out and help them to talk about it in ways that are comfortable for them. And so going back to your other question before about, with religious communities, in religious communities generally, certain, like there's maybe more structure around sex before marriage and even sometimes during marriage than in non-religious communities. And that sometimes gets internalized by people as either sex is bad or shame, or their sexual urges are bad. So like I really want to try to take the shame out for someone, whether not to make everything okay or do whatever you want, but to help them be able to talk about it with language like we would talk about anxiety,
Mhm.
and to be able to talk to their partner. And I've asked clients what they like sexually. I remember asking a man who probably had sex with many, many partners, and he's like, I don't know. I was
Mm.
like, okay. And it's because he was acting, he was performing. He wasn't really thinking about what do I like. He's thinking, what do I think they want me to do? So
Mhm.
it's also about like authenticity, like not being selfish, but like, can you be vulnerable enough to say, hey, honey, or hey, buddy, I like it when you touch me like this. That's a risk
Mhm.
that many of us are scared to say to someone, because what if they say no?
Yeah. And I think it's also one of those things that as people just grow, like there's different phases of life, whether it's young kids or going through menopause or just like whatever, the person you were partnered with 5 years ago, 1 year ago, 20 years ago is probably not the same person. And so there can be agreements or things that people enjoy that maybe worked at a certain period of time that then have to be rediscussed. Like even just thinking about, when kids are really little, it's like there's usually more logistical planning in regards to any aspect of the relationship because there's just so much to do. But those things, you don't have to still have Wednesday be your date night, when the kids are off in college. Like you can
Right.
reshape that and discuss that. And I think that
100%. Like you
even
might
just like
need
having
planned
those
sex.
conversations, yeah,
Yeah.
like having those conversations to adjust things is so important.
Also, the way a 40 or 50, 60-year-old has sex is different than the way a 20-year-old has sex, right? Like our
Yeah.
bodies change. So having those conversations too, like Barry McCarthy, who's a sex therapist and a teacher of mine, he calls it the good enough sex. Right?
Mm,
We may not be having that rockin', even though I think 20-year-olds don't realize how, the beauty of youth is wasted on the youth, like how healthy and performative their bodies are. But as you get older, for a man, whether it's what they call, I hate the word, but performance, erectile issues, or for women of desire, or other issues with their body, learning how to navigate and talk about those things is so important because we're no longer in our 20s. Our bodies are not responsive the same way. And so if we're holding that standard for what it was like as our 20-year-old for responsiveness, whether to be aroused or not, we're going to constantly be feeling less than. That impacts a couple too. So 100% couples evolve. And just like you learn to, like, when you're empty nesters, what you do is different than when you had three little kids or one little kid running around the house and you're exhausted stepping on Legos. The same thing sexually, your
no
relationship's going to
Legos.
evolve and change. Yeah.
Those are the worst. Saturday morning, you're walking to get your coffee and just like. So let's talk money. So what are some conversations or approaches to money? I love the idea of kind of saying like both sex and money are about power and who has power, who has influence. But like, what are kind of some of the nuts and bolts conversations? And then I'd love to get into
Yeah.
kind of the power of both of those.
So much, right? Like even today, I'm just thinking of two clients here where I am. It's like 1 o'clock. I had one client earlier today. Her husband got a huge promotion. She's like, he's hotter now. Like
Hmm.
men and women are told sometimes, like, to like power, wealth, those are hot. They're arousing for some people. There's a respect, right? But men command respect based on income. Our culture, wrongly or rightly, like a guy who stays at home for some people would be embarrassing. And I don't think so if they're staying home taking care of the kids. But so like I think it can impact arousal or respect in a relationship. When there's a in our culture, it's happening more because, as studies have shown, the job market that has the greatest growth, I think 15 out of those 15 professions, 12 women are the majority in those
Yeah.
professions, right? So there's an increasing disparity of income for women over men. How does that impact power dynamics at home? Or the couple that I see a lot of times, the types of couples where the woman's out there, high powered job, and the man is kind of like figuring it out still in his 40s or
Mm.
50s. Not that that's wrong. I changed careers in the middle of my life, but so I think income changes power dynamics at home. You have to be able to talk about it. I think, people talk about betrayal around sex and relationships, but there's financial betrayal and secrecy, which can be a
Hmm.
block to intimacy too. So it's another couple I was dealing with just before you getting on with you, like, yeah, they're both hiding money from each other.
Yeah.
And I spoke with their couples therapist. I saw him, but yeah, she's like, guys, you got to have, like, you're both pointing the finger at the other person, but neither is willing to show, like, all your cards financially, and that creates disconnect and mistrust. So money can create, like, just like betrayal in a sexual or romantic way, money can either enhance trust or decrease trust if we're hiding. So I think transparency, these things are like important conversations. People in early stages of relationships are often scared to show their wealth or not wealth because they're scared to be judged by it.
Yeah.
Right. And, in the like I was not never taught how to write a check.
Mm.
I was out of the house. Middle of high school, I was done with school and I just left. But so I never got to learn how to write a check for years. And sometimes still I can feel insecure, like what goes on what line. I have to double check it as I write it because I did. So if we don't get fiscal education from our parents, and now we meet someone, and so they might have a lot of education. They may have been modeled we're getting modeled from, just like we're having how to love modeled by our parents, we're getting a relationship to money modeled in our homes too. So that
Mm.
all comes um, into the relationship. And when I work in my work as a rabbi, if I would officiate a wedding, one of the areas of relationships that I would talk about with a young couple is like their relationship to money, because
Mm.
that's going to impact their relationship with each other.
Now, Gary, like, this is more of, might as well use your expertise while you're here. So, I got divorced after 17 years, and now in, a new relationship. We're 3.5 years in. Claire, who was our event planner,
Yeah,
is my partner. And so, when it comes to second relationships, partnerships, marriages, committed relationships,
yeah.
what are unique landmines of that for intimacy around sex and money?
That's a great question. First of all, I think hire them to do events for you to keep the structure the way you want it. That's the first thing I'm just
We
teasing.
learned through that we don't work well together. So we
Yeah.
both have said not next year. It was a good test, but and it was nice she didn't like report to me directly, but it just was a weird dynamic for everybody.
I've done that
So
too. It's a weird
yeah.
dynamic. Um, yeah, look, you're not marrying or you're not dating your ex. That's the first thing,
Mm,
right? Like we walk in used to the dynamic of our previous relationship or relationships. So I have to kind of like, of course, we're informed by our past always, but I want to try to see them with clear eyes.
mm,
And so in the past, maybe it was scary to talk. Let's use what we were using before. It was scary to talk about money with my previous partner. It created this huge, fight or something. Maybe that will happen here, but maybe not.
mhm.
So I want to try to be clear, like when am I interacting with them or when am I putting my expectations from previous relationships onto them?
Yeah.
And I've probably learned some, good and bad habits from my previous relationship, right? Like she
Mhm.
probably got you partially trained or vice versa. And, and you learned what worked before. So I think like, and we also, look, I'm divorced too. It hurts to get divorced.
Mhm.
We all, whatever meaning we attach to it, whatever the circumstances were, like it doesn't feel good. And so nobody wants to have that happen again. So how do I still have the courage to love again vulnerably and to take the emotional risks necessary to create a deep connected relationship, but also not get hurt? And if I play it too safe, I'll never really develop the new relationship. And if I don't have any brakes on, I'll probably do the same thing again. So
Mhm.
it's like finding that balance, I think.
And how important would you say it is for those second relationships to have, whether it's a prenup or a working financial agreement, or like actually sitting down and whether it's mediating or working with Chat GPT or a therapist to say like how's money split? How
Yeah.
important is that to really have it down in writing versus just having ongoing conversations?
Yeah. I think it's very important. Like the quote I have from one of my previous supervisors was, "Therapy is about making the implicit explicit. We bring out what's implied into words and actions." And so since there's so much attached to money
Hmm.
and fear around talking about it, and also we all have our own histories with conflict. And if you've gone through divorce by nature is conflictual, unfortunately. I mean,
Dear
sometimes
Lord.
people have a good divorce, but they're brutal because
Yeah.
I think it's because it's easier to get divorced angry than it is to get divorced sad. Right?
Mm.
Anger feels so much better, especially for men, but also women, but especially for men. Anger feels up, and sad is just a bummer.
Yeah.
And we're just taught to not feel sad. That's bad. So people go to anger and like that X, like it doesn't serve people well. I'm not saying
Yeah.
that. So I think it can increase if we already had a tendency to be conflict avoidant. It can increase our desire to avoid conflict in the new relationship and then to avoid these uncomfortable discussions about financial arrangements. And that's only going to create more problems, right? Like when I avoid conflict, I tend to create more conflict down the road. It's kind of like balancing the national budget.
Mhm.
Yeah, kick it down.
So tell me, the last question I always ask is, if every private practitioner in the world were listening right now, what would you want them to know?
I'd want them to know, one, that whatever modality you do or don't use is secondary to being relational with the client. Use the relationship with the client. Listen to your body to give you all the information, because if you're busy thinking about what's going on, you're not even present. If your nervous system is in the session, use that and your body to have be relational with the person, because that's where the healing is. Like, all the talk therapy can help a little with psychoed, but it's really going nervous system to nervous system, which is when we act out some way, when we say something we shouldn't, we do something that's harmful to ourselves, that's not logical. That's nervous system. It's not our brain. Use that. That's your greatest asset. That's what I would say.
So awesome. Gary, if people want to follow your work, refer to your practice, where should we send them?
Yeah, well, I would say if they want to reach out either client-wise or talk about a case if they're a clinician, or business ideas, I always love chatting with people anytime. And if I can't help direct where to go. So I think the easiest place to start is our website, intimacyrecovery.com. That's it.
So awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, my pleasure, Joe. Thanks for having me and for the work that you do.
One of the things about having a podcast is you get to selfishly just interview people like Gary and say, hey, I've got stuff going on in my world. So, if you're thinking about starting a podcast, reach out to us. We have a whole team that helps people launch podcasts, helps manage podcasts. We can just do the actual just submission to iTunes and, linking it technologically and having our sound engineers work on it. Or if you want ongoing maintenance, if you already have a podcast, it's really inexpensive compared to most other companies. And we view it as we're coming alongside you. Most companies, they have all the passwords, they pay for everything, and then you pay them. We have you actually set everything up so that you're just giving us the keys temporarily. So that if you ever want to move on to somewhere else or have your own team do it, super easy peasy. So if you're interested in that, just drop me an email, joe@practiceofthepractice.com, or read more over at podcastlaunchschool.com. We also have the Group Practice Conference coming up in May of 2026. That's what Gary attended this year. That's a little bit ahead of us where we're at now, but if you want to be on that wait list for when those tickets open up, we know that they're going to sell out. We've actually already put down the deposit for next year. It's going to be at Milliken Auditorium here in Traverse City, and we're going to be doing all of our breakout sessions are going to be in an art gallery. And so imagine having conversations with other group practice owners talking about, maybe sex and intimacy in your practice, maybe talking about money issues, maybe talking about, how do I get to 7 figures in small groups in an art gallery. And then we're going to have our large group keynotes in the auditorium where TEDx actually puts on their TEDx. So it's going to be amazing. GroupPracticeConference.com is where that is. And also, we could not do this show without our amazing sponsors. And today, Headway is our sponsor. If you are looking for help running your practice and want the best group practice you can have, you're going to want to sign up with Headway. They are trusted by thousands of group practice leaders to simplify their insurance admin and reach more people through in-network care. If you're curious about how Headway can help work for you, head on over to join.headway.co/Joe. That's join.headway.co/Joe to learn more. Thank you for letting me into your ears and into your brain. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Special thanks to the band Silence is Sexy for that intro music, and this podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the producers, the publishers, or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, or other professional information. If you want a professional, you should find one.